is one of our favorite quotes.
Ta-da,
Kelly, I was not aware that ta-da was in our branding guidelines.
Did you not know
I haven't got that memo yet.
No, that's in our pipeline. That's our next shirt. So,
Harry, if you wanted to do something for our branding, you could have spent the last 10 years getting jacked, but you haven't.
I haven't got time. I can't do design and get jacked.
He's a dude. If you saw the before and after between where Harry was 10 years ago, this is jacked. Like I hadn't he pulled up like the old picture and I was like, holy shit, dude, you packed on like 30 pounds of muscle. Dude, the problem is you just were starting from such a deficit.
Yeah, so I went from 11 stone, which won't mean anything to you, to 14 stone. So 3 stone, which is the equivalent of probably 20 kilograms.
Yeah.
So that's quite. I'm happy with that. Thanks, Callie, for the support.
Hey, that's what we do around here at Power. I think we pump each other
people
up.
Helping people.
Yeah, people helping people. It's powerful stuff. So, how you guys doing? Nice to have you on Power Athlete Radio instead of just seeing you guys behind the scenes.
Episode 550.
I can't believe we've done. This is episode 550.
I can.
Wow. First outing.
Callie's like, my ears are bleeding. I know exactly how many of these fucking things we've done. I have to listen to this nonsense.
It feels like more.
Well, when you listen to it 3 times.
That's
Used
true.
to.
Yeah, she's like, now I just don't even do it. It's not
No.
First outing for me, though. So
yeah.
Is it, Harry, are you serious? Is this the first time you've ever been on the podcast?
It is. I think it may have been vague mention of it in the past, but I shied away.
Oh, we make fun of him a lot.
Yeah, well,
precisely that reason.
That's true. We do. You guys have talked about Harry Heptonstall so much, and it's kind of crazy that it's taken so long to get him on here because, the amount of times that we've referred to him as kind of the genius behind the brand it's just amazing that now there's a face to the name. That's kind of cool.
That's too kind of you, Callie. Thank you. So
I like Puppet Master, just pulling the strings, pulling the thread.
Yeah, just we've all got our own strengths, and obviously mine is photoshopping. Or so I took over from John, I guess, as the Photoshop master back in the day.
Yeah, back in the day, you were only like worth your weight in Photoshop. That's pretty much, if you wanted to have any clout at Power Athlete or really just survive, you had to know how to Photoshop just as a defense mechanism or as maybe like a offensive movement if you needed to do that.
These are all true statements. I mean, you have to know how to defend yourself on the internet, and being able to Photoshop people's heads into strange situations and into weird phallic symbols is like really how you defend yourself. And that's like how I got into graphic design. All of a sudden my email, like an email hits, I open it and it's a picture of me and my face with a bunch of dolphins ejaculating on my face. And it was addressed to me and like a few hundred other people. And I was like, oh, wow. And it was Brian from CrossFit Oahu fucking basically shelled me and was like, bring it, bitch. What do you got? Just out of nowhere. And I realized I couldn't defend myself in the internet age. So I had to enlist Joey, my designer, to come over. And he showed me a little bit of Photoshop, a little bit of like graphic design with Illustrator. And I asked him, I'm like, how many hours will I need to get good at this? He said about 100. So for the next 5 days, 20 hours a day, all I did was Photoshop and Illustrator and that. And by the end of that 100 hours, I just started fucking shelling him with just the greatest shit ever. And that's how I learned how to graphic design. And then I started designing t-shirts. And then Harry fucking saw them.
And then that's when I waited him. So the moral of the story is obviously sex sells as you're photoshopping dicks on everything. But I think it was at that stage that I probably became aware of it and suggested. Yeah.
Well, it was like, who's designing your shirts? I'm like, I am. He's like, well, they look like shit. I'm like, fuck you. You design them then.
He's like, enough of the ejaculating dolphins on the show. Oh my God.
Dude, I'll have to dig. I'll have to dig into my email. I wonder if I still even have that email account. But God damn it, I have never in my life felt more defenseless in that moment when that thing hit and I saw the picture and then I saw all the people that it was sent to. it was like I had my hands tied behind my back. I was 5 years old and I was just getting punched in the face repeatedly. by my
Well, for our
brothers.
listeners, we'll post that in the show notes.
Okay. Or you know what? I could just whip one up with you, Tex.
Don't.
Because I had the template. Oh, dude, it was pretty funny. Like now I look back at it and fondly with laughter, but at the time I was fucking mortified because like you got to remember, as an NFL player, the only thing I used the internet or really a computer for was booking travel to go to fun places. That was it. I had like an email account that had like travel savers, and so I'd be like on like Thursday, I'd be like, oh, where am I going this weekend? That was it. I didn't use it for banking. I didn't use it to download music. I did nothing on the internet.
We had a very different childhood, is all I'll say to that.
and then all of a sudden I get out in this internet age, and next thing I know, I got a blog, and people are attacking me by having dolphins ejaculate on my face. It's awful.
So rather than just copying dicks onto photos, I guess would now be a good time to kind of do the transition as to the origin story of Harry Heptonstall.
Yeah, let's pull on that thread. Harry, when did you find CrossFit football to then be insulted by John's art ability?
Great question. Let me look into that for you. So I can date it all specifically. It was I was in my final year or the first year of my professional design life. I think I was trying to impress a girl. I won't name her, but basically,
Harry, between you and I, it worked. So
yeah. Thanks.
Are you winking at Tex?
It was me. No.
So I was trying to impress Callie, as the story goes.
With graphic design.
Yeah, so look at these lovely pictures. But no, so it predates all that. It was more before it was the aesthetics. I was trying to improve sort of my aesthetics. The film 300 was massive in the cinema, aka the movies to you guys.
The movies.
Yeah. So I'm trying to broaden our horizon and bring a little bit more diversity into the mix. So the cinema, the film 300 was pretty big. And then the girl I was trying to impress was hugely into that film. So I did a little bit behind the scenes working out, what could she possibly like about that film? And it was obviously the Jack guys. So did a bit of a desktop research, found out Jack Jones / CrossFit. Then followed obviously if I do CrossFit for a bit, I'm going to look like that. What I eventually realized is if I did CrossFit for a bit, I'd end up looking like that, but riddled with fucking torn muscles and injuries and stuff. So it was at that stage, poking around the internet again, I came across CrossFit football. And I kind of loved the energy of it. There was all this kind of dick punching and lovely camaraderie in the comment section, should we say.
Do you remember somebody named Coco?
Not exactly.
In the comment section?
I remember is there was a guy that would go on about there was Ingo, obviously, who'd been there since the start. And then there was the honey badgers. There was some of that stuff going on.
Yeah.
But what came out of that was obviously I suddenly developed strength, some modicum of athleticism. And then a believer of karma messaged you guys at that stage where I'd gained so much from what you were posted online for free. I was like, wow, you're doing this for me and helping me. What the fuck have I done for you? And it was at that stage where probably a modicum of arrogance carrying out of university, being an awarded designer, having the fortune to work with individuals at university like Jonathan Barnbrook, a guy that has done numerous album covers for David Bowie. I kind of had that. I was
bravado.
So I had a trajectory, should we say, within the creative world that I knew I could bring value to what you guys were doing. And I put that into an email. You'd probably challenge the way that I worded it is maybe a bit confrontational, but effectively, I just wanted to bring some help to you guys. So along the lines of, I love what you guys are doing. You've helped me. How can I help you?
That's not how it went. That's not, dude. Let's not let's not rewrite history. Let's be honest here. It was like, hey, you guys are it was pretty much like, hey, I've been using the program. I had a few questions. Who does your designs? They're shite. And I remember being like, who's
I actually
shite?
think what I said was, it makes my eyes sick.
Yeah, no, like it feels like my eyes are burning. Yeah, no. Who were some of the original names on there? We had Professor Booty, who used to give us his barometric pressure. And then, I heard a rumor that he and Coco were dating, but I never could confirm or deny that one.
I can speak for Coco. That is not accurate.
Okay, then we had our FKS. Remember, there were all those
X12, and then within there was MCQ, then there was me, Callie,
and then there was James G,
Mopar. He was part of that XII
or FKS, which were based. Those guys were at some FOB in Afghanistan, and this was like their only connection to the world. Yeah. And then there was Jaybird, and we had Big Josh.
Yeah.
And then we had
T Rose
and Travis. And then who else was in there? Ingo. I'll tell you, we can't get rid of Ingo. I don't know what it is. This guy's been with us forever. Then
real stickler on our Trustpilot review.
And then who was Ruiz's assistant?
Smuggler. So the final 2017, the final run of CrossFit Football, CrossFit Ass Backwards, hit up Smuggler and his wife. They were in Oktoberfest at the same time.
Nice.
So connected with them, and
I had a great time. No, those were good days. There was a lot of feelings hurt on that thing. It was solid.
Yeah. And I think Jack Street, I don't know the Johnny Watt feeds, but Jack Street's pretty ruthless now.
Is it? No, people helping people. It's powerful stuff. That's how I keep it.
Candor.
Yeah.
Direct.
Oh, interesting. All right. So, Harry, sorry about that detour. So you want to get back, you reach out, and I think
that was point, when our relationship blossomed.
Yeah. And then I think I went to Northampton with Ben Oliver. Yeah. So we traveled, and that's when we met Harry.
Yeah. So it was like behind the scenes, there was obviously a little bit of legwork done on tidying up PowerPoints and some of the stuff that was more essential work as opposed to like brand growth. But I remember the first time I met you, I was sort of thinking, Northampton. So what was interesting is you guys clearly looked at the map of England, just went, what's the middle point? On reflection, Northampton's probably not the best place to go. Is not to speak ill of any of our followers there, but
the reason we went to Northampton was because they had a big gym and it was central.
Okay, cool.
So do you remember their space? Because I think the first time that we went, we had 63 people at Northampton. So it was just they had just a huge space. So I think it was purely because
just about fitted you inside.
And it was one of those things where we just needed a big space, and I know we had looked at some of the spaces. We wanted to go to London, just a bigger city, but the problem was we couldn't find anything. All the spaces were kind of small. And then what's funny was the guy, I can't remember the dude's name, but the dude who had one of the big gyms in London was super prickish. Kind of blew us off, and then we go there, and then is mad that we didn't go to his place, comes to our deal in Denmark, and then writes me a fucking terrible review. So
well, that's good. But I had a lovely time in Northampton. Is the headline
is North? I don't really know a ton of the what's good and bad, but I don't know. Is Northampton not considered a decent party, man?
It's a nice enough place. It was just kind of it's not like one of the headline cities, but rather than getting lost in the geography of Northampton or something, I remember the headline of that was meeting John Wellborn, the 11 stone, which is about 75 kilograms or something, skinny Harry Hepton style, basically being taken into the arms of a much bigger John Wellborn and feeling like a bit of a rag doll.
Yeah. No, well, I think I punched you square in the stomach.
Yeah, like, how dare you say my graphic design is not amazing?
You were like, oh, I really like your just random colors. You'll be like, why is everything black and then one is yellow? And I'm like, I don't fucking know.
Yeah. I did. I remember doing an audit of like your logos and stuff like that, and just trying to. Again, it was all said with like help of trying to grow and stuff. Because I remember we had sort of, it was you, Ben Oliver, Craig Zielinski, but having time with you, being able to kind of absorb like the John Wellborn, the sort of the fire hose that is the information source, like all that kind of brand essence. Because it wasn't far after that we kind of started chatting about like para athlete and potentially growing that as an entity.
Well, the interesting thing with CrossFit football is we didn't own that brand.
Yeah,
so like we owned all these ancillary pieces in terms of like the seminar and this and everything. But at the end of the day, we were building brand awareness into a brand that we did not control and could easily be taken.
You were just banging the drum for CrossFit ultimately. Yeah. And while she did an amazing job, I think there was a point where you kind of needed to step out of the shadows for that, wasn't there?
Yeah, no, I mean it. And what was amazing was that it lasted as long as it did. I remember thinking, like, I can't believe these people haven't broken up with us yet. I mean, I'm sure, I don't know, maybe you guys have dated people where you're like, I'm going to just try to say and do whatever I can to get this person to break up with me. And you're like, they won't break up with me. And then finally, the one thing which I thought would have never got them to break up with us was referring to them as the Outback Steakhouse of training.
Yeah, who would have thought? Who would have? Power of social media, dude.
I mean, but like who? I mean, like if somebody said, "Hey, we're going to Outback," you're like, "Oh, they got Bloomin' Onions. It's pretty good. They got beers." Like, I'm not mad at going to Outback Steakhouse.
No,
it's not like I woke you up on a Friday night and I'm like, "God, I could go for some Outback." But if somebody said, "Let's go to Outback," I'm okay to go. I just can't believe that they had so much disdain with being referred to as the Outback Steakhouse of training.
I think it's, when you say something that's a little bit too close for home and it resonates.
You think that they were all at Outback Steakhouse when they saw that email? They were like sitting around drinking beers, eating Blooming Onions.
What does this mean?
What the fuck? Is he spying on us? We got to get rid of him.
I think if you had said like the Olive Garden of training, like endless soup, salad, and breadsticks, then I'd be like, all right, that's a giant obvious FU,
Yeah, it was. We were giving the consumer a lovely analogy that helped them understand the products. That was it. That was just telling a story. That's what we were doing.
Hey Harry, so when you sent the original email and then you were kind of meeting up with John, did you already have in mind like a vision of where you wanted to go with it? You knew where we were starting, but did you already have something in mind of how you wanted to change things, or did that just happen over time? Or you were just basically talking shit? No,
beautiful kind of bringing it all back to the origin. But I did have I would say that like my skill set obviously in brand development, that kind of like personality and brand behavior things. So I know it was a good few years ago when I was a little bit more naive to kind of the true power that you can harness with that. But I knew what you guys were doing wrong, and I knew kind of quick fixes. I didn't necessarily have the true vision that I think we've sat together as teams and worked out. But you're never going to. You're going to have kind of a direction of where we want to be going, and then it's like, it's like almost the skeletal mass. How do you then start building the skeleton to it? So to answer your question, back in the day, it was more, I knew we could be doing it better to match the product at least. But now it's like, okay, we know what the product is. It's a case of like actually allowing everybody out there in the world to understand it as well. So there is those lovely, obviously, empower your performance. It's kind of more than just working out for me anyway. And I'm sure you guys agreed to some point. Actually, I think the true turning point was it 2017, the first symposium where I was like volunteered to talk?
15.
2015, you're right. Mm-hmm. Predates that.
Oh, you mean the one, the first one we did in Newport Beach?
Yep. Yeah, that's right. Harry came out and presented on the brand. Yeah, I got that slideshow.
So that was the true, oh fuck, it can't just live in here. It has to be a thing that you can articulate to other people. So like what you guys do beautifully is that you do the in-person seminars, you live and embody the brand, the way you speak, the way you behave, the way you walk and talk. That's great, but how do you distill that into kind of the aesthetic, the online persona effectively? So it was kind of distilling that into a talk, and I remember thinking, "Oh Christ, I've got to stand up as this tiny individual and say, oh, yeah, fly the flag. This is the rally cry that we're going to follow." But like as a team, you're hugely supportive, and I kind of had a vision that it was absorbing your information, John, like the way you talk, the way you speak, everything about like you as the individual, the eat the wheat, be the hammer and stuff. But he was trying to distill that in a way that like the average person could relate with. Because I remember vividly reading sort of Eat the Week and thinking, fuck, I am the weak person in this room. I need to change that little narrative so it's more of a compelling thing. So I know you, me, and my friend, I'm sure you won't mind me mentioning, Patrick Harvey, worked on sort of distilling the language around that so it became a more compelling piece. So not a call for kind of cannibalism is kind of the...
Well, it's funny because people have since read that, and then now people have been trying to use Eat the Week with like some of that branding in their own brands, and we have to send cease and desist, which is hilarious. Yeah. Well, because when I originally, and people know the origin story for Eat the Week was we were looking for a tagline for the team series, or no, it was our Occupy Strength. We'll go back even further. And I remember I had seen like all this Occupy Strength, and I went in to go lift weights, and Lemmy's Eat the Rich came on. And as I came back out, I came out with Eat the Week. And I have no idea where that all came from. But then I made those T-shirts, which is funny because I'll see them on occasion where it was like white, and then I think the week was in blue, maybe.
Yeah.
And then so that was where that started. And I remember like Googling for like probably a legit hour, just looking for like anything, trademark searches, whatever, and had to that point had never seen or couldn't find anybody actually using Eat the Week in any manner. And I went 50 pages deep, did trademark searches, nothing. And I was like, well, I guess we're on this one. And then we used it for almost 7 years before we finally trademarked it in 2018. So it's pretty hilarious that, we used it and nobody really caught on to it until after we trademarked it, and now I'll see it.
Yeah, no, everyone's trying to cash in on it. But I guess looping back to your question, Callie, of did we have the vision? Did we have that? It's something that's kind of like blossomed as we've gone along. Me working with you guys, working with you, Callie. I remember that initial sort of presentation of what the brand's about. You might not remember this, but it resonated with me. Is there was I think I showed you guys like an advert from back in the day that Channel 4 Creative over here in the UK had done for like the Paralympics. And you, Callie, in particular, it seemed to kind of like react with you. So these are individuals that aren't like typically able-bodied, but they're still like eating the wheat. They be the hammers, that like badass motherfuckers, as we'd say. And I love the fact that it wasn't just a case like, so John, all respect to you, you played in the NFL, you played tip of the spear, amazing. And I love the fact that there are guys out there doing it. There's also a load of people that aren't there, but they're still trying their hardest. And for me, those guys are still power athletes. It's as much in there as it is kind of in there for me. It takes that kind of mental makeup, like be the hammer isn't just about like the dominating in a particular play, it's dominating in a field. So if you're in a transaction or a boardroom meeting, it's not kind of being that meek and mild individual that's going to be run away with it. I just love the fact that we can now help empower individuals both mentally and physically to become better individuals. That's effectively for me what the brand is. So
I got one correction. As the power athlete historian, the first symposium was 2014, December, Harry. So
December 14.
Wow. Now I feel old.
Well, like the thing which is kind of always resonated is I feel like words are fleeting. Think about how many times you get or we've gotten up and given different talks, and the ability to be able to pull out certain little pieces and then brand it into something where now it's like a shirt or some form of, I don't know, like visual branding, where now it ties back and begins to create this ethos. And I think we've done a good job with not only like the posters, but I mean just sitting in here looking at the branding in this room, with hammers, and then the icons for the skulls over here, and obviously the neon, the shovel, the spoon. I mean all these little pieces where they're just not words said that just disappear, because words are fleeting. I mean people say things and they just, the minute you're done, I mean it either resonates or it doesn't. People remember it or maybe they don't, but the actual icons and then bringing them to life almost like solidifies, sets them in concrete to where now, like I'm looking at, Battle the Bullshit over here to the left of the TV, we're looking on. So all these pieces, that we've from,
the essence of what makes us what we are. And essence is more, transcends kind of language and visuals and stuff. But
it crystallizes it. Because, like if you have never listened to the podcast, or you've never heard us speak, or, this is your first time here, or the first time you click on, you see these, imagery, you see like the, I guess type, like the type form, the fonts, whatever, and all these different kind of taglines and pieces that fit, and they kind of all fit together to create this ethos. And I think it's been interesting that they weren't necessarily manufactured, and then we had to like work them into the, it's not like, hey, we want to create this company. You go to a branding guy and then he gives you a playbook.
Exactly. There's honesty in it.
Yeah. It's honesty and organic. It's things that like have been said on this podcast, said in lectures, talked about, stories, whatnot, that you were like, oh, here's a little piece. Let's pull that out now and do something with it. And I think that's, that makes it all very, very personal.
Yeah. Well, like, credit to you, Callie, you're an immense writer. When you read like the intros to the blog itself, like the energy, the personality on that, you can't fake it. So it all needs to be rooted in inner truth, or it will fall apart. And I can talk about that based on having worked with substantial brands globally, like your Johnny Walker, Jim Beam, or Haagen-Dazs, where if you've not got authenticity, your audience is going to rip it to shreds, and rightly so, because like one of our ethoses is kind of battle the bullshit. And I'd say at the moment, like there's a lot of, so you've probably seen that kind of push for Trustpilot, for example. In the fitness world, there is a lot of bullshit, like just trying to have a level of authenticity and transparency.
What is Trustpilot? Like I saw you jump on that, and I saw the emails go back and forth, and like we had to figure out the account. Like is it something that's more global, like bigger in the UK?
Yeah. So transparency on that actually comes from, and I can say, I don't know what the legal language is that I need to say around this, but my girlfriend is currently going through some car trouble. She bought a car, a performance car, and then the garage that sold it, there's a level of dishonesty about them, and that kind of made me realize as an online purchaser, like the value of being able to have this independent organization say it's either legit or not, and there's no bias. Like you go on Amazon, like who's written that review? I don't know. So like for me, it's part of our battle the bullshit mantra of like transparency, authenticity is let's have that independent organization that you can't pay to fake where you're at. Let our followers help other souls out there by saying what it's like. Taking a pinch of salt with Ingo's from back in 2019 when he was more reviewing the user experience. But,
I just can't believe some random thing Ingo got on there and fucking lambasted us 3 stars.
Yeah, but that's the thing is, like, as an online, it's a weird but fascinating world we live in now, isn't it? It's like I'm here in the UK, in pretty much close to Manchester. Callie, you're in Seattle. You guys, you're in Austin. It's like this global footprint, but you can create this kind of like fake persona or bravado, and maybe a reflection of my original emails to you, John and Callie, where I projected probably a 300-pound man of
I remember expecting to meet Harry Heppenstall and being like, if this dude isn't 6'5", 300 pounds with a black belt in jiu-jitsu and like some like clandestine fucking backstory that involves, you know, James Bond, MI6 and fucking, you know, murder for hire, I'm going to be disappointed. And then Harry's like, hello, I'm Harry. And I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me.
Super polite.
Yeah, like overly polite, handshake and nice. And I was like, man, I would not have matched the bravado in the email with who I'm meeting now. So I always tell people when you know, like when Harry emails them, I'm like, just take it with a grain of salt. He means well.
Yeah,
that's a good thing though that Harry didn't turn out to be that person, because, you know, I mean, Harry has his own strengths and talents and creativity and all that stuff. There's no question about it. And I think that it takes somebody who maybe doesn't meet that stereotype of the bravado that he presented, or that power athlete, what we originally were, you know, power athlete bravado and all that stuff. And so, yeah, it's a good thing because he provided a little bit of bounce to the force, you know, a little bit like you were saying earlier, Harry, like kind of that outsider's perspective of like, how do we transform this into less of that superficial power athlete to more of that, like, what is the deeper meaning of power athlete? What does it mean to empower your performance and all that stuff? So I think it's all good.
Yeah. So it's kind of like Nike's done it before us, but we'll do it better eventually. Is if you have a body, you're an athlete, isn't it? So it's kind of, I wanted to absorb kind of some of that mentality. Or not me, there's no me in team, it's all of us. We were talking through kind of the process. Like, it's easy, the shorthand is people look at John and go, right, 10-year NFL veteran, athletic prowess, moves great, all this kind of stuff. And there's probably potentially a level of intimidation with that, but it shouldn't be. It's almost like, for want of a better analogy, Formula One. So you get these high-end performance cars, flappy paddles, all that kind of gadgets and gizmo that eventually boils down to your everyday production car. Like, John's at the tip of the spear, or Cal, you as well as an officer in techs in your lacrosse. You guys are out there performing, but there's individuals that are kind of like new to it that kind of need that slightly, not a softer edge, but they just need to know that it's not like from day one you don't need to be up there, which is the kind of, it's more the mental makeup. Like, what can we do to help? Like, what are our like the holy trinity of power athlete that eat the wheat, beat the hammer, and move the dirt effectively.
Harry, did you ever have a conversation about, like, in keeping with that thought process of the skull? Because I always think, you know, the skull it's this intimidating figure and symbol, and it's evolved, obviously, which I think we should talk about kind of the evolution of the skull, because I think it's pretty cool. But just that in and of itself being the symbol of power athlete, how does a new person interpret that?
Dude, what's hilarious is the way the skull happened. Is I remember when we were getting ready to launch CrossFit football. As I was kind of going through this stuff, there was a checklist. And I remember Glassman pitched me CrossFit football. I drove up to Arizona, came the idea. I went home. I said, I'll have some in 30 days. Came home, hit up Brian from Sites at RX. We went down and he gave me this checklist. And one of them was a logo. And I was like, oh, fuck, where the hell am I going to get a logo? So I hit up the most creative person. I didn't know Harry at the time. The most creative person I knew at the time, who was my buddy Rick from Starling Gear. And so I hit up Rick and I'm like, hey man, can you help me with a logo? And he's like, yeah, I'll send you something. So he emailed me a copy of his Slickster, which is his logo. And I was like, dude, you sent me your logo. He's like, just you can use the Slickster skull. And I was like, dude, I don't want to use your Slickster skull. And he's like, no, fucking use it. You just don't use it in that format. You can change it. And I was like, okay. So I hit up Joey and was like, hey man, I got this idea. I want to take the Slickster, but I want to put it on like a shield. And I don't know why I wanted to put it on a shield. But I was like, but I want to put like a crack, like a football laces in the head and make it look like a shield. Cause I don't know, like maybe, like I can't remember what the shield idea was or why, but I remember I wanted the crack. So we created that original kind of a shield skull with the crack or with the laces on the head. and we ended up like, it was like I need 2 days, right, till we were going to go launch. So I sent it to him. We did like the obviously the CrossFit football. I think that was like a font that I had that I packed together, and I sent to Joey, and he like, I want to say like antiqued it in some way. And then I remember we loaded it to the website, and like that was the like there was really no like we're gonna have some skull. It's about the the age old like you got a pirate flag. I mean, people have asked me all these questions, and I'm like, honestly, Rick could have sent me a gear. He could have sent me flames. He could have sent me like anything, and that would have been our logo at the exact time. So that skull
was so cool. That skull was so cool. That original one was so unique. And one of the things too, aside from kind of the creativity of like the seam and the laces there, like the one eye was like squish. Yeah, like squish. And it added like this, I don't know what it was. It was just really cool how it was just kind of squished on one side. Like, really?
Well, so the skull squints. So what I did is, because I didn't really understand Illustrator, I actually squished the head, which actually made it look cool. So like I totally fucked up and squished the head when I did the logo. So that was basically our logo. And then we had to make shirts, and they looked fucking awesome. The only problem is, and this is why when we went to Power Athlete, the skull got a much more simpler deal, was that we needed them for like the 1 pixel, like when you see your tab. Like it was so complex that we couldn't put it down into 1 pixel for it to be an icon on a tab. So I remember Harry going through and being like, well, like this is how simple it has to be. And so by that time, and I even remember saying, I'm like, dude, if you want to shit can the skull, like we can go in a new direction. We can soften the brand. Like what do you want to do? And I remember really like nothing necessarily saying to us, like I can't really remember anything really resonating that didn't kind of fit.
Do y'all remember the first T-shirt with the new skull design, away from the slickster?
No.
I think I do.
Callie,
was it the one that like said Power Athlete on the neck and your head was the skull?
No.
Predates that. It was before me. This was
Wade's Army shirt numero uno.
Oh yeah. That was it, huh?
That was the part of the pitch to get people involved.
Oh, was
new logo, Wade's Army, year 1.
Don't you remember? I think I like didn't it? It said Wade's on the shoulder. I remember it was a blue shirt, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a blue shirt. Wade's Army across the chest with a little like orange Wade's wings.
Yeah. So I did the logo. That was before I got Harry involved. I think actually he said, "Let me do these designs. Fuck off." But I did Wade's, and it was blue shirt, black, and then there was a little like orangey red wings on it because the charity that Scott and Heather had was called Wade's Wings, and it was like Team Wadey Pie, and like they had all that stuff. And then I remember when they were like, "Oh, we're gonna need an army, aka Wade's Army." So,
no, you did an awesome job, and Callie, I'm gonna jump back on your original question. So John's kind of painted the tapestry of where CrossFit football logo came from, and you and Rick did an awesome job bringing that to life. But I dived in with slightly different understanding of how you'd approach branding, and as John said, it was the simplification of a logo, big to small and all that stuff. But I also I had my own personal kind of baggage I was bringing to it. Is like, I love this program, but is a skull right? A skull says death. This is like, is it killer? What's it kind of communicating? So one of the journeys you go on in branding is obviously a logo is like an expression of the brand. It's not just a squiggle or whatnot. It's supposed to distill the essence of your behavior and personality into a few pixels. So it's kind of on that journey and working with John and understanding kind of the essence behind it. I've got a little bit more of a romantic description of kind of where we're at now. So you guys can see our listeners, whoever on YouTube, they can see that huge Power Athlete skull in the background. It's like this quite iconic form. But some people are going to find that intimidating. Like I said, I have my own personal gripe with it. But I think that's kind of good. It's like, this isn't feel-good fitness, is it? This is about empowering performance and pinnacle performance, kind of slightly more the sharper end of the spear versus Zumba, for example. So I think a logo echoes the more severity of the program. But even deeper down that, more importantly, is like the skull itself is kind of like it's an icon of triumph, isn't it? Back in the day, kind of using the skull as a trophy of true dominance. It was like the original Olympic gold medal, like in Predator claiming the head of your enemy, that skull, that basically meant you were a power athlete, truly. And then I also love the fact, is it the Dylan Thomas poem, the Rage Against the Dying of the Light? It's kind of that reminder, isn't it? The skull being there, that we're not going to last forever. So make sure what you're doing makes a difference. And I love that, where it's like working out doesn't necessarily feed into that. It's like when you're actually, like Callie, you out there as a part of the thin blue line, actually going out there and making a difference. For me, I love the fact that we can distill that into an aesthetic which might sound really ambiguous. I don't mean like the skull. You should walk out with a skull on your chest, but that just the reminder that it probably sounds hugely patronizing, but when you work out, it's not just to get the reps, to get the number. There's a purpose behind it. Like there's a severity, and for me, it's like taking John's and Rick's original logo and kind of just giving it that little bit more of a bit of a spit and a polish, and that lovely meaning behind it of like Rage Against the Light, Dying of the Light, the war trophy, all that kind of symbols. Who would have thought, looking at the skull, that it meant so much? Because you look around our industry and there's a fuck ton of skulls, aren't there?
Yeah.
Doubt that they kind of underpin it with this much personality, thinking, the behavior, which, yeah, I'll probably go down the rabbit warren too much of that. So I'm happy for you guys to pull me back, and we could chat about the podcast space or.
Well, what would I mean, if we didn't have the skull, what do you think within the imagery? Like I don't know what the logo would be.
I love that question. If there was no skull, no symbolism in that, what would it be? Easy. I don't know.
Like
straight away. No. Well, you break it down into two things when you power athlete exists to empower performance. So it's the aesthetic representation of performance. So one of the avenues, obviously, for pinnacle performances is the skull, as the story I've just told. It's the war trophy, the triumph. That is true performance. There's a plethora. Like, I could spend an entire year creating this series of different logos and stuff like performance. How would that aesthetic look like? But for me, knowing John, knowing you guys, like, you've got to take that into the personality and stir it up. Like, what is the power athlete performance aesthetic? And it is that, like, punk meets pinnacle performance. Like, you guys aren't Zumba. You're not Les Mills, all this kind of lackadaisical, that will do. There's a serious accountability. Like, I remember Tex vividly, you and I worked out in HQ one time, and it was the first outing I'd ever done on a belt squat machine, and you sort of felt like my pants were taken down a little bit, because it was a case of not really knowing what to do, and it's like you've got to learn, you just got to get it. And I think the aesthetic, the brand, delivers that. Like, don't get me wrong, once you're on the inside, we'll take you under the wing, we'll help you, people helping people, all that kind of stuff, but you've got to help yourself to a certain point. And then, yeah, how do you distill that into a logo? Or, like you said, Callie, a tick.
Well, so I guess I would say probably in the past maybe 3 years, the designs that you've put out, like the posters and things like that, have just been like insanely good, insanely creative. Like John was saying earlier, you've organically taken the colloquialisms that John has kind of created as part of the brand, just like just out of conversation and lifestyle and that kind of thing. And you've embodied them in this like artistic form. And I'm just wondering if there are things that you have wanted to do that you haven't done due to time or whatever, or things like just related to the brand? Like, I'm sure there's tons of ideas swirling around that you haven't got. I mean, like what you did for the podcast room, insane. I think we should make it known that you were instrumental in everything that people see in the background behind John and Tex. But is there stuff that you haven't done you want to do?
Absolutely. So it's like John's analogy of sharpening the blade or things like that is it's always something you're going to want to work on. And as we grow and develop, that's going to aesthetically take a different form. And I guess it's not just the aesthetics, it's the behavior, it's the way we interact with customers. Like a brand isn't just a pixel, is it? It's much more than that. So there is loads that we want to do. There's a lot going on behind the scenes that we're going to be unveiling at some stage. But for kind of growth of the company, it's always going to be distilled in like what our brand values are, what we stand for, that empowering performance. If it doesn't tick that box, it's not being done. But jumping around a bit, like the podcast space, like shout out to my friend Sarah, who is an immense individual who can use software called is it Cinema 4D? Don't matter what it's called, but basically she can do this interior software. So I can have the idea in my head, like, wow, this looks great, let's do this. But rather than John spend all his time building it and then suddenly you see it and go, Christ, that doesn't quite look like first pass, let's try again. So the idea was in here, chatting with John and the guys and kind of distilling it into a physical thing. So let's take the audience around the spaces. You have obviously the neon sign, the punk meets pinnacle performance, the attitude, the personality of what we're about, huge logo straight in the center. John, huge personality, Tex, equally, it's sort of distilled there front and center. And the backdrop to that is the Be the Hammer wall. And Callie, credit to you, this comes from you. That I forgot what year it was, but I have the hammer. We all have our hammers that he gifted to us and etched Be the Hammer into the handle. So it was like, okay, take that, but turn that up to 11. What's the Punk Meets Pinnacle performance?
I thought that gift was the best idea I'd ever had in my
entire life. It annoyed me how good it was. I was like, fuck, what have I not thought of that?
No, it was good. Yeah, I mean, and that's why they hold a place of prominence right above there.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
No, so I've still got mine and I'll keep it until the dying day. But the sentiment, what's beautiful about the Be the Hammer is kind of the essence of like, it isn't just like, it's not about, so there's kind of two sides to it, isn't it, John? It originates from the story originates from when you were in the NFL, where your coach.
Yeah, no, it was Tom Modrak, who since passed away, who was our GM for the Eagles, came over, and I remember I was stretching in training camp my rookie year, and he squatted down and said, "Hey, I want you to know of any pick in this draft, you're my pick, and if you do well, I do well. Like our fates are tied together." And then he's like, "I want you to remember one other thing. Remember, this game is a violent game played by violent individuals who are getting paid a lot of money to do violence on behalf of old rich white men. So when you go out there," and that was like, and then it kind of trailed into this idea of like, if you want to play this game a long time, you got to be the hammer more than you're the nail. Because on every single play, you're either the hammer or the nail. As long as you end up being the hammer more than the nail, you survive this game. If you find yourself being the nail, get the fuck out. And I was like, I think I looked back at him and I was like, okay, be the hammer. And so that was part of my deal. So before every game, I would pull my gloves on. I used to wear like pretty thin receiver gloves, and then I would tape pads to I would do pre-wrap, and then I would take these these pads that they used for putting on people's ankles so they wouldn't get tape cuts, and I would put the pads all on my hands, and then I would take a roll of tape and I would pretty much cast my hand like a boxer. And at the bottom of the tape, I would always put like something that I was going to work on, like quick feet, stay low, be the hammer, fucking head and hands. And so I would always write myself messages on the inside. And then after the play, I would like just kind of look at them like quick feet, be low, big punch, whatever I was trying to work on that day, I would write. And I remember there was a guy named Keith Hamilton, and this is the irony of this whole story. Keith Hamilton, who people might not ever remember because you're never going to see him in the Hall of Fame. He was the defensive tackle for the New York Giants because, Strahan was on that team and he's such a big star. But Keith Hamilton was a nasty dude. I mean, by far one of the strongest, best players I ever played against because the dude played the game exactly as it should, which was fucking max intensity every play. And he brought it. And his nickname was Hammer. And so they'd be out there and they'd be like, come on, Hammer. And they kept saying it. So then I would kind of wrote it there where it was like, be the Hammer. And it was just kind of an interesting piece. But I remember he had all of his kids' faces tattooed on his arms all over him. And I remember being thinking in my head, oh man, this guy's got his kids tattooed on him for motivation. And I asked him and he's like, yeah, I got to pay these motherfuckers a lot in child support. Makes me fucking angry to see their faces. It's the motivation I need to go out there. And I remember thinking this dude's this dude's a bad dude. But
that'd be interesting. Bro.
There was all this really interesting imagery. There wasn't just one moment to be the Hammer. There was a coach telling me hey, you're the hammer, the nail. You got to be the hammer. And the hardest dude I played against. I mean, so much so that the first time I played against him after the game, I was so fucking pissed that the guy, I felt like he had manhandled me, that I ripped his picture out of the program and put it in my wallet. And for that entire offseason, every time I opened my wallet, I saw his face. And that was the motivation I went and trained. Age old, you remember Rocky had the Clubber Lang in Rocky 3. He crumbles it and throws it. Same deal. And, and his nickname was Hammer. And the dude had this move called the forklift that legitimately he would fucking he would let you punch him and then he would grab your hands like a little kid, by the wrists. And then he would cross you up and just throw you back. And we called it the forklift, and he would hammer people with the forklift. So there was all this really just interesting imagery behind this idea of be the hammer. And, I told that story, maybe not in this much detail at seminars when we would always, talk about the mentality. Yeah. And the mentality in which you have to take things. And I'll tell you this, the move the dirt mentality and the be the hammer mentality, I think you've done such an amazing job of bringing them to life, so much so that I find myself saying these things over and over. We had a big oak tree that fell in the backyard right over there and fell onto the barn. We had that big freeze. The roots came out. Huge fucking oak tree. It took me 3 weekends to cut this thing up because it was 100 degrees and raining, and just the weather was just so unforgiving this summer. And as I was out there cutting, trying to get this thing organized, I just kept thinking to myself, don't stop moving. Just move the dirt, move the wood, just keep moving it. And I kept thinking chop wood, carry water, which is a book, but that idea of just keep moving, move the dirt. And I get my kids out here to help me to pick up sticks, and they're it's hot. I'm just keep moving it. Just don't stop moving. Just keep moving. If we don't stop moving, we're going to get done, and then we can go inside and sit in the air conditioning. We'll be fine. I'll take you guys out to dinner, whatever you want. Just don't stop moving. And even yesterday, I had that the guy from Strong Coffee. We were talking about Evan Roth. Is it Rothfelder?
Adam.
Okay, from Strong Coffee.
Adam R.
So Strong Coffee, they've commissioned me to build this thing called the Death Bike. So it's a assault bike that we're going to turn into this Ghost Rider, I don't know, Halloween thing, because Rogue is having their Rogue Invitational here on Halloween up in kind of North Austin, Georgetown area. And so he wants to have a booth there and then do this thing called the Death Bike Challenge. And he kind of did me a drawing. So he dropped the bike off yesterday. And the cool part, and I think obviously he's a good dude. We always want to help him, but we just don't have a ton of time. We're going to the Olympia this week. Then the weekend after that, we have a private military gig that we're going to teach. So my month is getting compressed. I got my daughter's birthdays coming up. But all the proceeds are going to go to Wade's Army. So you guys know I'm a sucker for anything that benefits Wade's Army, because that's obviously our charity. So when the guy said, hey, what if all the proceeds go to Wade's Army? I'm like, we'll bring this fucking thing up. So I started taking measurements and designing this thing. But even in that thing, I'm sitting there looking at it and being all right, hey, we're going to build this like the idea of like building something that's representation. And if we put our hands on it, it just can't be just gluing some shit on. It's going to have to be what?
I'm going to build on this one.
Oh, no. It's got to be like done well. It's just not like, gluing shit on that you get from like, I don't know, the art mart so that it can look fucking Halloween-y. Nah, it's got to be like redesigned in this. And it's just, I think that mentality of not just being like everybody else, taking it a step further, like all of this stuff just resonates into everything that we do, so much so that like, man, I find myself saying these, ideas. Oh, but I know where I got to. So I worked on that, and then I had to go set up the cams because I had to refill all of our feeders. Hunting season's coming, but I'm also battling these hogs who are showing up and fucking me up. But the problem is the hogs are real smart, and they're finding different places to destroy on my land. So I had to go out, and I'm like basically setting up these cams. And then what I do is when the cams text me when something goes off, and then I basically pop out of bed and I go out there and I try to kill these things. And every time I get up, I like last night, 2:30, all of a sudden it rings. I pop out of bed. I put on my helmet. I have a PBS 14, which is like night vision. And I got thermal in my rifle, and I'm out there and I'm like, be the fucking hammer. I'm going to hammer these fucking piglets. And surprisingly, I didn't see any last night.
Well, the Carrie also, Harry Carey, writing the programming, building this narrative and expanding on it to truly empower people. If we look at sets and reps, people can think, oh, I'm doing this program, I'm doing that program. But when we start to add a mentality aspect into it, that's when potential is truly unlocked. So having these messages inside the head, creating the message to then coach alongside the sets and the reps, that's where the Power Athlete programs, whether we're talking Field Strong, Bedrock, Jack Street, Grindstone, can truly be unlocked. Like there's a lot of imitators out there. There's a lot of people that jump into the programs, try it for a cycle or two, and then try to market as if they're able to think they got it, but they don't. So it's this combination of programming with the coaching.
But the difference is, and I think what you're alluding to is if you're just trying to clone somebody else's brand and like build on like the ethos that's already been created, then it's a disingenuous voice. Like if you follow Jack Street, for example, and then you're like, you see kind of the flow. And the interesting thing is, I don't think people can understand that, like they might see it, but they don't understand the architecture and they don't understand like the way I'm attacking it. Now, if I explained it to them, maybe, but I don't know if you could see it. But if they looked at it and said, hey, I'm going to clone something like this, I think all it ends up being is like, when you see the
mirror, isn't it?
Yeah.
Reflection.
It's like when people try to rip off some of your shit, and we see it all the time. It looks like a bad fucking version because it's not authentic. Like the names, for example, for the programs are really interesting. Like Jack Street was one of the ones that we used when some dude looked like he was getting pretty swole. Be like, man, that dude's looking jacked, dude. I guess he moved in on Jack Street, and it was just kind of a funny joke of like, obviously that guy, moved to a new location because he doesn't look like himself anymore. Or like Grindstone, which is that idea of like, this is for a Fortune 500, CEO that has his nose to the grindstone. So we needed it. And then the idea of the horse, Field Strong, Field Strong comes from when I was a rookie in the NFL. And I think I've told the story, but we were lifting weights and the dude was in there barely benching 225, this big country dude. And, we're in there fucking banging heavy weights. I'm like, look at this big, sorry fucking white dude, man. He's going to, he's basically making us white guys look bad by not fucking benching 405 for reps. But he was a big dude. So then we go out there and I'm playing left tackle. He's playing left guard. He sets, he fucking throws this dude like off of his feet. Like, whoa, the guy goes flying. And I remember at lunch, I slid up on him. I'm like, what's up, man? You threw that dude like a rag doll, but you were barely benching 225. And he kind of a Southern accent, which is funny because when I hear Southern accents on women, I think it sounds very like sexy and appealing. On dudes, you just sound like a fucking idiot. And it was like this country like, well, I never really lifted weights before. And he goes, but I grew up on a hay farm in Georgia. And we used to bale 300-pound bales of hay and throw them and move them. And he goes, playing football just felt like baling hay. And he referred to it as field work, like that cock strong, farm strong, country strong, field work, farm work. And so that's where the Field Strong program came from, because he wasn't just weight room strong. He was country strong, field strong, cock strong. Like there's a million different things. And if you've ever played football or wrestled or been around people that grew up doing manual labor, like Roger, one of our, fucking favorite people in the world, Roger Loyo, who's one of our buddies from back in California, who's actually the guy that got me into welding. He looked at me and he said, "Hey dude, the only skill nobody ever regrets learning is learning how to weld." And that was kind of like the push to get me to learn to weld. But Roger talked about when he got in the trades, because he was a union pipe fitter and a union welder, and he got in when he was pretty young. That was before like the advent of like a bunch of technology. So he said these old dudes who were pipe fitters, they used to have to set the pipes with wrenches. So he goes, imagine you got like an 18-inch pipe and you basically sleeve it on there and you got a collar. These dudes would have these huge like 3-4 foot wrenches that they would have to get on a pull. And he said these dudes' forearms and hands were just like fucking concrete and iron, because these guys have been yanking these huge wrenches and having me. He goes, the wrenches weighed 30, 40, 50 pounds. And then they would have to set them in odd places and then get leverage and torque. And he goes, these old men, he goes, were so fucking physically strong that like, you'd go to like shake their hand, or, you go to like hand them a beer and they would like, break the fucking bottles, or you go shake their hand and feel like they were going to shatter your hand. And he was just like, those guys were just strong dudes from growing up doing that stuff. So a lot of this idea of field strong comes from this idea of like, just don't be weight room strong, be field strong where it really matters, because the performance is on the field.
Yeah, man. If I can build on that as well, what's beautiful that everyone's just listened to there is the story that's unfolded, the authenticity, the depth. What you're saying, and rightly so, is if somebody tries to kind of fake that, it falls apart. But there's the truth to Feel Strong, Jack Street, all our programs, the kind of personality, the aesthetic. You join it because you want to be part of that because it speaks to you, but ultimately it's about finding that kind of story and just building a bit of a tapestry and painting it, bringing it to life and stuff. I make it sound a lot easier than it is. Thankfully, you've spent 10 years in the NFL and met some very interesting people.
And what's crazy, Harry, it's been 10 years. It's almost, I retired in 2009, so we're actually like 12 years. So I've been doing power athlete and CrossFit football longer than I was, did in the NFL. So it's pretty interesting to see how long it's created. Yeah. And, the fact that it's we have obviously had enough of an interesting life that we've been able to fucking beat the war drum for a lot of years, and also, be able to really do what we intended to do, which is influence people in a positive way by, stripping away the glitz and the glamour and just being able to provide people a really good training resource that they can port in anywhere that's universally true.
Very true. And I'm going to loop back to way back when we were talking about that hammer wall. Like, it's lovely hearing the anecdote, the story, but again, that's like your one's very much at the tip of the spear, oh fuck, I'm not that. Maybe I'm the nail in that scenario. But what's beautiful about hammers is there's loads of them. They're quite precise instruments. If you take it at face value, it's just like thwack, done. But you've got like ice picks, you've got sledgehammers, toffee hammers, ballpoint hammer. You've got a plethora of hammers all doing different tasks. So what I really love is it becomes this kind of icon of storytelling again, which is what I really enjoy. So it's kind of it's about striking true, hitting hard, and making positive impacts for me. Kind of.
I also like that, I think in a very sentimental way, if you give, let's say you have, I don't know, John, you give your son his first hammer, when he's like 13 or something, it can be something that he has his entire life. Like a hammer is an instrument that really, it's unbreakable. It's something you'll use over and over again. You get more proficient with it as you go. And that was part of like why, when I got you guys the hammers that I got you, they're old. They've been used, and, you can give someone a fancy new hammer and all this stuff, but it only really develops character and purpose in your life. And that it becomes that proficient tool the more you use it. So I especially like that kind of aspect of the metaphor also.
Okay. See, it resonates. It transcends kind of the icon, the aesthetic. So
Harry, I was thinking when your friend designed this room, we're a little bit different. I mean, the icons are pretty close. I put I have the deer skulls from all the bucks that I've killed on this property, but for the most part, it was really when I first saw the thing, I thought, "Fuck, man, that's really cool. Fuck, how the hell am I going to build this?" And like that was like I had the panic of like, well, shit. I mean, but then I realized how not to say it was simple by any means, but it was really easy to like be able to stand back, take a picture of the room, and then look at the graphic design and be like, okay, what are the pieces we need? And so we pretty much started repaneled all the room. Was able to find there was 2 or 3 different types of black that we tried, but something that was really black. Find the guy to do the skull, and then actually get the proper sizing, which I think was interesting because we were like, how big do we make this? And I remember you like, well, the aspect ratio is here and here, and this should fit. I mean, it was like, and then being able to source all the different pieces on the side. What was cool was we already had I'd already made the angle iron table for the bar top. So that was just a matter of painting that and then finding the shovel and the spoon and like, and then obviously the Dylan Thomas, Rage Against the Dying of the Light poem.
And he was giving you measurements in like kilograms, kilo, whatever.
And then she actually did the hammer wall. And then what I did is I had the hammer wall on my computer and then, counted how many hammers she had and then pretty much went through and laid them out exactly as she kind of put them. So it was, interesting. Like it's kind of like the bottom has this kind of like bottom set of hammers and then the pieces and all that. So
the logo, doesn't it?
I want to know the look on the face of the cashier when you're buying all these hammers. It's like the grocery store clerk checking out 150 toilet paper rolls.
Yeah, he had duct tape and like zip ties and all these hammers.
Gloves, just big trash bags.
Well, the hilarious part is, so I go.
Ski mask.
I first went to Home Depot, but their hammers were like, I think their cheapest hammer was like $14, and so I had to buy there's like something like 50 hammers on that wall. So I started on eBay and I bought a bunch of collections of old hammers. So there was like lot of 35 hammers, and so I bought and I bid on a bunch of those, got those, and then the problem is that in the original design there's a bunch of like she threw like a bunch of variation of hammers, but then there's a whole bunch of hammers that are similar. So the ones underneath the chin were all similar, and so I was like, well, shit, okay, I'll just go buy those. So I went to Home Depot. Home Depot had these wooden hammers, but they were kind of too big and they were too expensive. So then I went to Harbor Freight, and they had these wooden hammers, which were like, I don't know, like $5. And I like bought like every one they had. And actually I had to go to 2 Harbor Freights to get enough hammers, but it was cool because the way that she set it up is there were like different hammers, and then there were the same hammers. So it actually worked really well because I was able to use all the antique ones that I got off of eBay, but then go and buy the ones that we needed. So it ended up flowing out pretty well.
So we did do like together trying to work out like the balance and stuff, but like what behind the scenes, I think we were kind of surprised, positively surprised. Like you didn't have any amends. We presented this and you were like, yeah, it looks great. So with like behind the scenes for audience and our listeners that don't know. So before I jumped in full time to Power Athlete, I was a full time creative studio here in the UK where we just before I left and jumped in full time to Power Athlete, we were overhauling the James B. Beam Distilling Code distillery tour, very much under the creative direction of my good friend Rory Sutherland. Credit to him. Learned a load from him and actually distilled kind of that storytelling within a space and use that in the podcast space. So that back wall is obviously all be the hammer. You transition over to the right behind Tex. That's the training wall. Tex is the director of training. So we have Grindstone, we've got Jack Street, we've got all our programs. You can see the hammer helmet just popping in there on the little spirit tray. There's lovely depth of kind of discoverable stuff in there. And then you transition over to John's wall, the right, or the well-worn wall of wisdom, as I call it, is all those lovely nuggets of knowledge and just like Rage Against the Dying of the Light, that lovely story that's like obviously quite emotional, intertwined into the story of your father.
I still laugh about me sitting down and being like, Dad, you gotta fight this thing. And thinking that I was going to motivate him by reading him my favorite poem of Dylan Thomas. And he's just like, shut the fuck up. I'm really tired. And he just fell asleep. And I remember like I had this like impassionate deal. I was like, Dad, do not go in gentle. And he's like, I'm really tired. Shut up. And I just laughed and was like, okay, I guess it's your time. It's your time. But it doesn't diminish it anymore. Because the original one, which is not that one, the ones in my bathroom, my dad, I have so many memories of waking up in the middle of the night and hearing my dad's typewriter because, pre-computers, my dad was old school, typewriter, double space before, after a period. And so I would be like, as a little kid, I would just like wake up and I hear this like, and so I remember asking my mom, I'm like, what's Dad working on? And she's like, oh, he comes home after work and he does all of his billing. So my dad was a lawyer and he would actually have to submit and type out his billing. It wasn't just like, hey, this is how much I work. You have to submit your billing. So he would do that and he would work, maybe till, sometimes he would work till 2. Sometimes he'd go to bed and wake up at 3 and do it. And so I would hear this typewriter all the time. And so before he passed away, I went and I actually typed that poem out on his typewriter. And then I have that in my bathroom and I look at it and I got a picture of him. But I remember asking my mom, I'm like, what's Dad working on? And I'm like, well, why doesn't he do that during the day? Why does he do it at night? And my mom's like, well, because he's working. Like, that's what you have to do to be successful. You have to work. Like, if the day ends when the work gets done. Just because you're tired doesn't mean the work stops. And that moment of like work ethic and seeing my dad at like 3 a.m, dog ass tired, like up fucking typing, doing his billing, has always resonated with me. Where it's like, no, I mean the work stops when the work is done, not when you're fucking tired. And I think that mentality, and I learned about work ethic and fucking busting my ass and being successful, not from any book or from anybody, but by the example of which I saw with my parents. And so like that moment, and when I read that poem, like, do not go gentle into that good night, like, fuck man, that's like, hands down, the mantra. Yeah, and seeing it typed on that paper too, super resonates. Where I'm like, shit, man, like this was typed on that typewriter that as a little kid I heard him fucking banging on. So just, like there's a lot. And, what's kind of fascinating is people ask me about this stuff. And like Harry Shaw, I remember asked me, he's like, how do you have so many deep memories? And I'm like, I don't know. It just like, I didn't want to go through life just glossing things over. Like I'd like to stop and take a moment to like almost try to like crystallize things in my life, like, moments with my kids or, sitting out there last night, trying to set up the cams and get everything done. Like I try to like stop and take these moments and crystallize them, because I feel like if we don't have this, then what's the point of living? Like, I mean, what do we just wake up every day to try to get to the next day to wake up? No, like I think like you have to stop and take moments and enjoy things and feel that the life that you're living is contributing to something that not only makes yourself better, but makes other people and a life worth living. And, and I think like when you're younger, I'm sure I was when I was playing the NFL, I didn't understand that magnitude, but shit, I stayed up last night to watch Brady beat the Patriots, and like the success that guy has had, it crystallized his name over and over again as the best to ever do the job, and the way he's done it, whatever, man, like for, and I knew Tom, or I know Tom, and was fortunate to play with him for a little. But like seeing it, like, and to see how far he's taken it and the way he's done it, his attention to detail and like just his, like the passion for which he's doing it, like fucking gives me goosebumps. And I think like that's a life worth living, more so than just, fucking waking up every day.
If I can build on that, like you said, it's about sort of effectively being a better person, isn't it? Which is distills back into that kind of empower your performance, the helping us help others become better. So I think that's our mission as a team, isn't it? Literally, it's not the selfish kind of progression of oneself. Like the reason why I love working with Power Athlete and very much being part of it, like I've tried to sell in my previous job working with Nestle, Häagen-Dazs, like type 2 diabetes. Like, I've had enough of that. Selling booze, had enough of that. Like, booze is great, don't get me wrong, but there's a certain point where you want to add to society, you want to bring value. Like, for me, that's like very much what we do with our programs and nutrition. We just help people become better people.
Awesome.
Ta-da.
Perfect. Well, we're going to end it there, guys. Hey, thanks for joining us on another episode of Power Athlete Radio. This is episode 550. I want to thank Miss Callie Hinsman, or is it still Callie Hinsman?
Oh yeah, he took my name. So
okay. Well, we can say Mr. and Mrs. Tom Hinsman, so I'll be like good on that one. And Harry, who's been our guiding light for a long time, pulling strings, pulling the threads behind the sweater, and then Tex with the veritable sweater, which we should go get waxed.
Proud of.
Which, dude, he mentioned the waxing and he tears up. It was fucking great.
Yeah, Callie, I can't thank you enough for being there.
It's called PTSD.
Yeah, Callie, thanks for being there for me.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, anytime.
Callie, thanks there for being there for me. Harry, thank you for being there for me and for being fucking guiding the ship, because we would have gone like that. Was it Florence and the Machine? The fucking ship on the rocks. We would have been fucking breaking it on the rocks a long time ago. So
happy to be a part of the ride.
I'm not a good swimmer, so I don't want to crash on some rocks. So.
Awesome. Well, cool, guys. Thanks for tuning in to Power Athlete Radio.
Bye. Bye.